Hello, creative and crafty people. I hope y'all are doing well today. In this video, I'm going to do my best to show you how I created these fun diamond-shaped copper wire earrings with Jasper beads. If you watch this video and are still not sure of how I did something, please feel free to jump in on the comments and ask. I will do my best to answer any questions you might have. So if you'd like to learn how these earrings are made, then come along and let's get creating. The materials we'll need for this project are as follows. We will need some 18 gauge wire, 2 pieces cut at about 9 centimeters in length. You will need some 18 gauge wire, 2 pieces cut at 6 centimeters in length. Some 20 gauge wire, 2 pieces cut at 4.5 centimeters in length. 24 gauge wire, 2 pieces cut at 4.5 centimeters in length. You will also need some 6mm Jasper red beads, 2 of those, as well as 2 4mm Red Jasper beads. You will need a pair of ear wires. These I handmade earlier. You can watch an earlier earring tutorial to learn how I make these. You'll need a pair of flat head pliers, a pair of chain nose pliers, a pair of round nose pliers, a pair of flush cutters, a chasing hammer, a bench block, and also not pictured here, a ruler that measures in centimeters. This concludes the materials list you'll need for the project. If you missed something, you can either go back and re-watch, or you can check out the materials list in the description of this video. Also, I have other earring tutorials with instructions on how I make my ear wires, so feel free to check one of those out. Now let's get creating. To get started, we need to grab our 2 18 gauge wires that are cut at 9 centimeters. And we're just going to grab one of those and our round nose pliers. We're going to grab this wire at the very tail end and we're going to form a loop around our round nose pliers barrel there. We're going to bring the tail end of that wire up until it meets with itself. And we've got our first loop there. We want to make sure that's nice and tight and snug. We're going to do the same thing with the second wire. Grabbing it just a little way onto the tip there. Wrap the wire around the nose until the tail end of that wire meets back up with itself, like so. And now we have 2 identical pieces of wire. I'm using my flat nose to press those flat. And as you can see here, these are identical. And we're going to do this next part with both of these wires together. And I'm going to measure from the inside part where this loop is to where my flat nose pliers is there at 1.5 centimeters in length. That's where we're going to make our first bend. So 1.5 centimeters, and then we're going to bend this wire away from the loop. And we're going to bend it not quite a 90-degree angle, more like a 45-degree angle, like so. And then I'm going to grab at about 1.5 centimeters from that angle, and then I'm just going to measure to make sure I am at 1.5 centimeters. So there you can see to the first bend is 1.5 centimeters. Now the second bend is 1.5 centimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and make my second bend. Like so, making sure all these wires stay together, or both these wires. And you want to make sure the tail end of these wires are parallel with the first part of those wires just after the loop. So before we made our first bend. And here you can see that parallel right there is what I'm talking about. And now again, we're going to measure 1.5 centimeters from our last bend, making sure this one's still 1.5 centimeters, and it is. So now we're going to grab the wire to the outside of where I want to bend it, at about 1.5 centimeters, and then we're going to bend that wire up toward that loop. And here you can see I'm measuring this. My 0 on this is kind of hard to see, so that's why I go to a different number to start with, but that's 1.5 centimeters. And then I'm going to bend these wires just so they come right up underneath that loop that we made initially, like so. We're just going to adjust any adjustments we need to make, and there you can see our perfect little diamond. And now I'm going to take the tail end of this wire on one of those earrings and wrap it around just under the loop. Here I'm grabbing my chain nose pliers to grab that wire so that it doesn't come out of shape or pull in too tightly as I'm wrapping that. And I'm just going to press that wrap really close up underneath that loop. And I'm going to continue to wrap it around, and I want to wrap all the way around one full wrap. So here I'm going to keep pressing this up so it's nice and tight and neat with my chain nose pliers. You want to take your time while you're doing this because it just makes it look a lot better when you can get it nice and neat and tidy. So there we've got a nice tight wrap. I'm going to just push that up close to my loop as possible, like so. And now we're going to take this tail end and we're going to angle it straight down into the diamond. And you want it to be centered right straight down to the center there. And then make sure you retighten that loop back up, because sometimes it comes apart a little bit as you're doing that. And there we have that wire coming down the center of our diamond. And now I'm going to grab my flesh cutters and I'm going to just snip off the tail end of this wire. I want there to be about 7 millimeters of wire left, or thereabouts. And I'm going to create a loop toward the front of this piece. So with my round nose pliers, I'm going to grab the tail end of this wire and I'm going to wrap a loop. And I'm making this loop as small as possible with the very tip of my round nose pliers. And you kind of have to readjust your round nose pliers as you need to get that loop to wrap right back up in there nice and tight. And you want that loop to come up inside of that diamond there, as tight as possible. Now with my chasing hammer, I'm going to flatten this diamond shape all the way around, being careful not to hit the little loop we just created. You don't want to hit that. And you're just going to do some gentle little taps to flatten the frame of this diamond. And there it is, all nice and hammered. And you can see how it just gets a nice little shine there. And with the magic of video editing, I now have 2. So there are identical little diamonds. And now we're going to grab our second set of 18 gauge wires. And I'm going to grab my round nose pliers again, and we're going to create another loop at the end of these wires. These were the 6 centimeter cut wires, by the way. And there we've made our loop, bringing the tail end of that wire around to meet back up with itself. We're going to do the same thing on the second wire. I'm going to create that loop, bring that tail end back up to meet with itself, like so. Make sure that that wire meets back up with itself. And now we've got, again, 2 identical wires. Now I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to set it inside of the original diamond shape, and I'm going to make this diamond so that it sits inside of the other diamond, so about 1/8 of an inch smaller. So I just keep going back and forth and measuring, and I'm going to sharpen up my edges by using my chain nose pliers on that bend and just kind of flatten the wire to sharpen that edge like so. And then I'm going to bring it back into where that loop is and just measure. We're just eyeballing this. It doesn't need to be perfect. We just want it to be close so that it sits inside of there and is able to swing around freely. And this measures at about 1 centimeter. So if you want to just use the measuring tool, you could do that and just measure 1 centimeter for each bend. I just like to do things by eyeballing. And now we're doing the last little bend here. Again, I bend it, but then I sharpen it up using my chain nose pliers. And here you can see that little diamond fits inside of the original diamond. Now notice my diamonds aren't perfect. They don't need to be. This is a handmade craft. So let it look like it's handmade, not like it came out of a manufacturing process. So here I'm taking the flush side of my flush cutters and lining it up with the other wire to flush cut the tail end of this wire. And now when I go to straighten that wire out and line it up, it's perfectly lined up with the frame. And now again, I have 2 of these made, and I have hammered them just as I did the first ones. So once you get those hammered, you grab your chain nose pliers and open the loop on one of your smaller diamonds. And you want to twist those open, not pull them open, or you will misshape your loop. And then you'll need to fit that little loop inside of the original loop on the larger diamond. Now this is a little bit difficult, but it can be done. You grab your chain nose pliers, grab the tail end of that loop, and twist it back into shape, like so. And there it is. And see how that just hangs nice and freely in there? And this would just be a cute pair of earrings just like this if you just wanted to go with simple. And there in the background you can see that I've completed 2. And now we're going to move on to the 20 gauge 4.5 centimeter wire and grab our round nose pliers. And again, we're going to make a loop. Surprise, surprise. So here we're going to make a loop a little further up on the round nose pliers this time. And we're going to make a head pin out of this. So I'm bending that wire straight down from that loop. And then with my flathead pliers, I flattened that head. Now grabbing my 6 millimeter Jasper bead, I'm going to slide that onto the tail end of this head pin wire, like so. Now with that tail end of the wire, I'm going to bend that at a 45-degree angle right above that Jasper bead. And now with my flush cutters, I'm going to cut the tail end of this wire off, leaving about 8 millimeters of length at the end of my wire. And then coming in a little on my round nose pliers, I'm going to make a loop at the end here, bringing that all the way back around till it meets with itself. I'm going to straighten my little loop up here, and there you can see I've got my bead element all made. And now with the magic of video editing, once again I have created that bead off camera for y'all so you don't have to watch it a second time. Now we're going to grab that 24 gauge wire cut at 4.5 centimeters and the round nose pliers, making a loop yet again. But this time we are going to continue wrapping that tail end up underneath that first loop, creating a coil around the tip of the round nose pliers. So we're going to do a double coil until we get all the way around 2 times. So there's the tail end of the wire and then the other tail end of the wire, and they meet right up with each other. Now grabbing my chain nose pliers, I'm going to insert it into the coil, and I'm going to take the tail end of that wire and bend it straight back over the top of the coil so it's centered over the coil. And we're going to bend that tail end up straight perpendicular to the coil, like so. And what this does is create a stop for the bead to sit on. So grabbing my 4 millimeter Jasper bead, I'm going to slide it onto the tail end of this wire and see how it just sits on top of those coils. And now we're going to take the tail end of the wire coming out of the top of the bead and bend it at that 45-degree angle. And I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and create a loop at the top of this bead, like so. Now before closing up that loop, we're going to slide the 6 millimeter bead element onto this loop, like so. Now this is a little bit tricky. You have to grab a hold of that loop and then wrap the tail end around the base wire. So I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and grab that loop as best as I can. And sometimes you just have to find the perfect position. This takes me a second to figure out what position to get at. And hold on to that loop and then continue wrapping the tail end around about 2 times. And now with my flush cutters, I'm going to cut off the tail end of this wire. Flush cut that, like so. And then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and I'm going to burnish the tail end of this wire up underneath the other wrap. Get it all nice and neat and tidy so we don't have anything poking or sticking out to catch on anything. And there you can see, all snug as a bug. There we go. And now we just need to do a second one, and I have already done that. So moving on to the next part, we're going to grab the chain nose pliers and open the loop on the top of the 6 millimeter bead. And again, we open it by twisting, not pulling it out. Then we're going to place it on the base of that larger diamond frame. And then we're going to twist it back closed, like so. And look at that. Isn't that fun? I think that just is so cute. And now again, we're going to open the other loop on the other bead element, like so, and then place that on the larger diamond frame. Twist that closed. And voila, we finished the earrings. Now all that is left is to add the ear wires. So grabbing my ear wires, I'm going to do the same thing I did with my beads. I'm going to grab that loop with my chain nose pliers, twist it out to the side, and then place my earring onto that loop, making sure the front side is facing the direction you want it to. And then we're going to twist that loop on the ear wire back into place, like so. And look how cute that turned out. Again, you're going to do the same thing with the other ear wire. We're going to open the loop by twisting it to the side, grab the other earring, place it on with the front side facing forward, close your loop back up, and there we are with our finished pair of earrings. So what did you guys think of this project? Did you enjoy this one? Was it a little more difficult for you? Was it easy for you? Let me know in the comments below. Notice these are not perfect, but that's what gives them their charm. Think about it in life. No one is perfect, but yet each one of us is unique in our own way, and that's what makes us special. That's what makes us beautiful. So in the same way, a handmade item, it's not going to be perfect, but it's special, it's unique, and it's creative. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more like this, don't forget to subscribe. This also helps to get my videos out to other creative people like yourself. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next Thursday.